The air war in Ukraine is escalating more and more, and almost every single day Ukraine is now striking high-value targets deep inside the Russian Federation. And we are seeing Ukrainian long-range drones hitting major export ports like Primorsk and Ust-Luga, while cruise missiles such as the Flamingo are targeting key parts of Russia's defense industry far inland. And while Ukraine's offensive capabilities continue to grow, Russia's ability to defend its own airspace is steadily declining. Because for months now, Russian air defenses has been suffering heavy losses, and today large parts of the Russian sky can no longer be effectively protected. So in today's video, we're going to take a very close look at the current state of Russian air defenses, how Ukraine is managing to dismantle it piece by piece, and why this development is so strategically important. Hi, my name is Alexander Korton. I'm a strategic analyst and media manager from Austria, and I'm also the founder of the German YouTube channel Geopol. And today we want to talk about the Russian air defense. Because if we take a closer look at the air war in Ukraine, it's clear that things have changed quite fundamentally over the past few months. Because up until around mid-2025, it was mainly Russia that dominated the skies, carrying out constant air attacks against Ukraine and repeatedly targeting civilian infrastructure as well. But in recent months, the momentum has shifted, because thanks to the development of large-scale production of its own weapon systems, Kiev is now able to launch large-scale coordinated strikes against Russia almost daily, targeting both military and energy infrastructure. And by autumn 2025, Ukraine had already managed to damage around 40% of Russia's refining capacity, and in recent weeks attacks have expanded to include critical export infrastructure and key defense industry facilities. And a major factor behind these successes is the rapid scaling of Ukraine's defense industry. So, for example, the Ukrainian company Firepoint is reportedly producing up to 200 FP1 long-range drones per day, and production of other systems, just like cruise missiles and even ballistic missiles, has also increased significantly. So overall, we can say Ukraine's offensive potential has been steadily rising for months now, leading to a kind of large-scale firestorm we've been witnessing recently. Well, I've already covered Ukraine long-range strike capabilities and these systems in more detail in previous videos. You can check those out if you're interested, but let's go back to the main point here. Because obviously these Ukrainian air attacks can only be successful if a significant number of the systems actually reach their targets and are not intercepted beforehand. So Ukraine not only has to increase its own strike capabilities, but it also needs to continuously weaken Russia's ability to defend itself. And the interesting part is, Kiev seems to be extremely successful at doing exactly that. Because when we look at recently Ukrainian strikes, it becomes clear that their hit rate on strategic important targets is increasing. Because Ukraine was able to hit strategic important export ports for the Russian Federation in Primorsk and Ust-Luga, and also defense industries in the Samara regions were attacked by the Flamingo cruise missile. And all of this paints a pretty devastating picture for Russian air defenses. Because Ukraine is not relying heavily on ballistic missiles yet, which are inherently difficult to intercept, but instead Ukraine mainly uses relatively slow drones and subsonic cruise missiles. And in theory, these should be easier to shoot down for the Russian air defense. But yet we see that Russia is struggling to protect even its most important infrastructure. And even areas around the capital Moscow are being targeted more frequently. And according to reports from Reuters, even high-ranking Russian officials have to acknowledge that no region in Russia can be considered completely safe anymore, because the drone attacks from Ukraine are steadily increasing and the Russian air defense cannot handle that. And these are not just my words, but also the words of ex-Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu. And we have to be clear, for a country that once claimed it would achieve its objectives in Ukraine within days and whose air defense systems were considered among the best in the world, this is a major embarrassment. And the current state of Russian air defense is becoming increasingly critical for the Kremlin, because Ukraine is consistently finding and exploiting gaps in the system, and these gaps are getting larger over time. Because Kiev is not only targeting oil infrastructure, it is also directly attacking Russian air defense itself, which has been suffering record losses in the previous months. And according to analysis based on hundreds of verified strikes reported by outlets like the Kiev Independent, Ukraine has carried out hundreds of attacks specifically against air defense infrastructure since mid-2025. And this includes radar systems, command centers, and broader A2AD structures, meaning the entire network that supports air defense operations. And the idea behind these attacks is quite simple but very effective, because Ukraine is systematically degrading Russia's ability to detect, track and intercept incoming threats. And by targeting radar systems in particular, Ukraine is creating more and more blind spots inside the Russian airspace. And without proper detection, even the most advanced air defense systems becomes far less effective. Because targets are identified later, reaction times are reduced and interception rates drop. And what we are seeing here is a very dangerous combination for the Russian Federation, because on one side Ukraine is launching more and more drones and missiles, and on the other side Russia's ability to stop them is getting weaker, and the results are visible almost every day inside Russia: burning refineries, damaged ports and heavily hit defense facilities. And we have to be clear, there's currently no clear sign that this trend is slowing down. And in fact, there are additional problems for the Kremlin, because Russian air defense is not only losing systems, it is also running low on interceptor missiles. Because according to information cited by sources just like United 24, Russia is consuming air defense missiles faster than it can produce them. And this of course forces a difficult decision, because Russia simply does not have enough systems and ammunition to fully protect both the front lines in Ukraine and its strategic land at the same time. So strengthening air defenses in one area automatically weakens it in another, and it's essentially a lose-lose situation for Vladimir Putin. Either you protect your strategic assets inside Russia and accept weaker defenses at the front, or you prioritize the battlefield and leave critical infrastructure exposed. And this problem becomes even more severe when we look at short-range air defense systems, because systems like the Pantsir, which are specifically designed to intercept drones in their final approach, are becoming increasingly scarce. Because according to Ukrainian estimates, Russia has already lost a significant portion of its Pantsir system since the start of the war. We talk about half of the systems lost, and the remaining systems are simply not enough to cover all critical targets. So when we look at the bigger picture, the outlook for Russia's air defense is quite concerning for the Kremlin, because Ukraine is continuing to expand its offensive capabilities, drone production is increasing, cruise missiles like Neptune and Flamingo are being used more frequently, and new systems like the FP9 Pelican are domestically developed ballistic missiles with a range of up to 800 kilometers could soon enter the battlefield. And all of this is happening while the gaps in Russian air defense are growing larger. And at this point, it seems increasingly difficult for Russia to effectively counter this trend. So it's very likely that the recent strikes on targets just like Primorsk and Ust-Luga were not the peak, but rather just the beginning of a much broader strategic air campaign for Kiev. A campaign that could potentially reach almost any target west of the Ural Mountains. And right now, Russia does not seem to have a strong answer to that situation. But in the end, I'm really interested in your opinion. How do you assess the current situation in the air war, and how do you think it will develop in the coming months? Could Ukraine actually achieve a form of air dominance and shift the overall outcome of the war? Let me know in the comments, I will enjoy reading them. Otherwise, if you found this video informative and helpful, please do make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel Geopol Global. And otherwise, I will end the video here. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.